Well, thank you, Mike, for spending your time today to discuss the fallacy of substituting massive cycle counting for deficient inventory control process accuracy. um, that's a long title, so I'm interested in your views on this topic. Can you start by providing a brief background of yourself?
My pleasure, Dustin. I'm Mike Shamrell. I have a long career in distribution, transportation, operations, inventory control, cycle counting, inbound, outbound freight, so on and so forth. Mostly in consumer products, division of consumer products, and also I have a lot of background. Large part of my background is a lot of automation, automated storage and retrieval systems. So without further ado, yes, that is a long title, but the situation that I kind of paint a picture for you. We've had two client assignments recently, and in both cases, one was a 6 DC network, and the other was a single DC network that also had manufacturing. We have found that in both these cases, the clients were performing massive amount of cycle counts. In one case, it was 70,000 plus annually. The other case, it was overset by almost 80,000 cycle counts. The problem with what they were doing was at the start of the year, they had a higher rate, inventory rate in their warehouse, and after performing all these cycle counts, they still, at the end of the year, had a large error rate and were making hundreds of and thousands of inventory adjustments. So it was very obvious from the start that the problem wasn't the cycle counting, and cycle counting wasn't overcoming the deficient process. So again, the title, The Fallacy of Substituting Massive Cycle Counting for Deficient Inventory Control Process Accuracy, is kind of what is a long way of saying that you need to look at the processes, because at the end of the day, all those cycle counts and all those inventory adjustments weren't really helping you. Wanted to kind of get into one of the two clients. The single DC hooked to manufacturing is probably easier to talk about and understand. To paint a picture of that client, they had a 50,000 square foot warehouse, about 3,000 locations. Some of the locations were pick to light for each pick, and some of the locations were full pallet for full case picking. They were performing over 70,000 cycle counts annually on a 3,000 location warehouse. Imagine that. Their event error rate was stuck at 0.17%. They had a 17% event error rate accuracy issue at the start of the year and at the end of the year. So after performing all those cycle counts, they had still not made a movement for any more accuracy, which told us right away there's got to be some process issues. If you're making that many cycle counts and you're making probably 12,000 inventory adjustments at the end of the year and you're still back to where you started, there's got to be something wrong, some issues within your processes. It turned out once we started, and the other thing we noticed too was the customer back order rate, the first pass yield on customer orders that were dropped to their system were running at about 25%, and the norm is much less than that. So their back order rates were getting affected, and it's all coming back to this root cause of why were there so many errors. We mapped the processes out. We mapped the full case process out, receiving process, etc. And we right away found the two biggest issues. The first issue we found was that the pick to light system for each pick had several process, methodology, and procedural errors built into it. It wasn't an operator issue. There was a lot of other issues. So we looked at that, and most of the inventory edits and errors found were in the each pick area. About 95% of the errors that we found that they were finding were in that each pick area. And the other thing we found as we went down through the process was at the end of the conveyor where each pick orders were coming out and getting scanned and placed on predetermined pallets, LPs, we call them LPs, license plates, to go to certain stores or certain distribution centers. They were simply scanning the boxes, the cartons as they came off the belt, and that basically was the end of the process. The system was then taking that each order that was scanned and putting it in it as shipped or already shipped or shipped status. We found that they needed to add one more step to that. They shouldn't have been just deleting the skid or deleting the pallet, deleting the orders as they came by. They should have taken each carton and scanned it, and then scanned that same carton to a particular LP that was waiting. They were building 4, 5, 6 pallets at a time. The problem was occurring was the cartons weren't always getting on the right pallet, going to the right DC, so they had a problem there. So there was 2 big problems. One was the pick-to-light process, each pick process, and the other one was at the end of the shipping process, the loading process, where the pallet building wasn't as accurate, wasn't forced. There wasn't enough being forced into the system to make the operators or assist the operators in getting the cartons on the right pallet. So that's kind of what happened at this DC. The bottom line is, if your operators are performing thousands of cycle counts and the event error rate is stuck at a high rate, 10%, 17%, 25%, whatever, you probably need to go back and really look at your process. The other problem that came out as we got into this farther was these errors were all coming back to haunt the client in another way. They were being billed over $400,000 in fines and penalties by their customers. And our contention was we could do a lot of work in solving system problems to make up for $400,000 worth of fines and penalties. So the issue was a very high accuracy, very high error rate. The processes had some definite issues, and at the end of the day, all those inventory edits, and if you've been involved in a lot of supply chain stuff, all those inventory edits that they were making every day cause havoc with your forecasting systems, your purchasing systems, your manufacturing systems. They can cause havoc with your back order systems, and in this case, the back order first pass yield of 25% is not good. And of course, they cause issues with your metrics and everything else that's associated with supply chain. So the message I'd like to leave everybody was, if you have a high error rate, you can't overcome the high error rate by just doing thousands of cycle counts. At the end of the day, you're going to have to fix whatever the problem is in your process. Questions?
And thank you, Mike, for sharing. And how can people get in touch with you if they have more questions?
Mike Shamrell, SHAMRELL at rnsmte.com. It's my email address. And I'm on LinkedIn, Michael Shamrell at Supply Chain Age. I'm on LinkedIn.
And thank you again for sharing.